just because Jesus is the flavor of the month doesn't mean that it's true.
That's right.
5,000 years from now, maybe Christianity may be forgotten, or maybe something else. Who knows? Just like religions have passed on, religions have, gone in and out of fads and whatever. It's the same thing. It's a human cultural property that's nothing more than a figment of our culture.
Good. So you've just communicated your faith. And your faith is religion is simply a cultural additive. Different cultures have different religions.
Right.
You can't prove that. It's a faith that you have.
True.
How can you take that as evidence if it's coming from the word of a man? You can take it as an idea and run with it and investigate it. I give you that. But you can't take it as any kind of proof.
Well, naturalism teaches us all that the only part of reality is matter and energy. And we all know that if matter and energy is all there is, that dead people don't rise. When dead people die, they just disintegrate. And then we read about this resurrection. Now we forget about historicity. Instead, we're so biased with our philosophical presupposition of naturalism that we say it's impossible. There's no way the dead Jesus could have risen from the dead. It's not an historical problem, it's a philosophical problem. It's real clear. The philosophy of naturalism teaches all of reality is matter and energy. And we all know dead people don't rise. But the historical evidence is that dead Christ really rose from the dead. Now, the only way that could happen is if there's a supernatural God. So you see, then we're right back into this philosophy of naturalism versus supernaturalism. Do I believe there's some type of God, or do I not?
Right, so what you're saying is you have to take what the Gospels say as true and accept that before you can accept the rest of it?
No. What I'm saying is, first of all, philosophically, you've got to move from naturalism to allowing for the supernatural.
Okay.
And then secondly, you've got to put together some tests to determine whether the Gospels are historically reliable or not.
What kind of tests do you have?
4. Internal consistency, literary style, archaeological evidence, and manuscript evidence. First one,
Okay.
Internal consistency. I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm real grateful there's not one. 4 different ones. I compare them. If they're contradictions, I got a problem.
Right.
But I read them, and there's a tremendous internal harmony. Second test, literary style. Once upon a time in the land of Nod, Jesus went out with Peter. No. At this time, in this place, with these people around, Jesus said this to Peter. Historical narrative is the literary style, not fairy tale, mythology.
Right.
Third test, archaeology. We're not talking about the island of Atlantis where Jesus was born. We're talking about Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Rome, archaeologically verifiable places. Fourth test, manuscript evidence. Hanky-panky by the popes in the Middle Ages, man. Motivated by political drive, they totally perverted those Gospels beyond recognition. False. Well, why do you say that, Cliff? False. Because the New Testament that we have in English today has nothing to do with the Latin Vulgate out of the Middle Ages. The New Testament we have today is based on over 5,200 Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscript dated from the 1st through the 10th century AD. Take those 4 tests together, the overwhelming evidence is not that the Bible's a word of God, it doesn't say anything about that.
Right.
Simply the Gospels are historically reliable. Read them as history and ask yourself, does the historical evidence point to the dead Jesus rising from the dead, or does it not?
I'm a student, sir. I'm a history student. I've had the opportunity to read a lot of text, a lot of native text.
Good.
Native text talks about what happened to him. And you have to discount the supernatural.
Oh,
Because
why do you
see it
discount the
around you right
supernatural?
now?
Why?
Where do you see it around you right now? If someone's coming back from the dead?
Wait a second. How does history teach you that you have to discount the supernatural? How does history teach you that?
Evidence. That's all I can...
No, sir. The existence of the supernatural has 0 to do with history. It has everything to do with philosophy and theology.
Which are great subjects, fun to study.
Well, then
but I'm
don't
not
stand there and tell me that it has to do with history. It has nothing to do with history. It has everything to do with your philosophy
You're asking me to worship
and theology.
You're asking-
No, I'm asking you to be historically honest. And understand that the Gospels are historically reliable because you put them through tests. What are your tests that you use as a history student to determine whether a document is historically reliable?
As much evidence as I can find through reading one book or another book on a subject. Read multiple books on a subject.
Good. We got 4 of them. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, multiple books.
Well, I read, so let's say I read about the Cortez conquering of the Aztecs.
Yes.
I've got the Spanish account and I've got the native account.
Good.
The native account is full of all this supernatural stuff that they believed in.
Yeah.
There's no account of that in the in the Cortez account.
Fine. So you read the Gemara, which is a very hostile record of Jesus. But at least they had the honesty to say, and he performed a lot of miracles, but he was a fraud. Yeah. And you read the great Jewish historian Josephus in Antiquities 18.3.3, and he talks about this is historical Jesus who died and then rose from the dead, supposedly. And all of a sudden you're going, wow, this Josephus didn't believe in Jesus, but he's talking about this historical resurrection maybe happening. So you got to start opening your mind and saying, I better go back and be honest about my philosophical presupposition, and is that really coloring my view of the text? I can't look a Muslim in the face and say, you want to know why the Quran is wrong? Because it talks about God. I mean, good gracious, what a philosophical bias.
You could.
Yeah, and be intellectually dishonest. That's real intellectual dishonesty. You know, Muslims, the reason the Quran is wrong is because it talks about God. Oh, gosh, that's so narrow-minded, it's scary. That's my naturalism and materialism coming right to the fore, and I'm just so biased by my philosophical presupposition, it's incredible.
Okay, I see you're pretty much promoting a Christian, approach to religion.
Good observation.
Okay. What makes you think as a mere human, we're all human here, we're all going to die someday.
Right.
None of us is endowed with any spiritual properties, connections to the supernatural that nobody else has. So what makes you think that you know the secrets of life and can tell all of us what we don't know? When you can't do any miracles here, all you're doing is talking. Any of us can go up here and talk about anything we want. It doesn't make it true. You're nothing more than a human, just like all of us.
Bravo. Well put.
So what makes you think you know the secrets of life and can tell everybody else about it?
Good. I do not know the secret to life. Do not put your faith in me. Do not give me your money. You'd be an idiot to follow me and put your faith in me. But Jesus Christ.
Okay, that right there.
The evidence is Jesus Christ is reliable. You'd be very wise to, for yourself, read the Gospels, examine the evidence that points to his credibility, and put your faith not in me, but in Christ.
Okay. A lot of us have Christian backgrounds. That's just their culture. A lot of people have Muslim, different religions. They were all brought up teaching that was the right way. That's what you think. That's what they think. What it turns out when you get down to the bottom of it, it's nothing more than I think, I believe. It doesn't make it true. You can believe whatever you want. Having faith in something does not prove it or validate it.
Exactly.
Okay, so you can believe in Jesus, Muhammad, whoever you want. It doesn't make it real beyond your own head. And,
Right.
So you can go rant and, go on and on about how real Jesus is, how real Muhammad is. It doesn't make it real. It's just a person talking. Jesus is real.
Fine. Fine, man, wait a second. That's just fine. But the historical evidence is that Muhammad really lived.
Right. So,
And the historical evidence is that Jesus really lived.
They may have lived, but it doesn't mean that they were some supernatural.
That's correct. You're right.
And, just because you say it doesn't make it true.
That's exactly right. That's why if you listen to what I said, I did not say, believe in Jesus because I do. No, no, no. I think you'd be a fool to believe in Jesus because I do. Instead, what I've asked you to do is, with an open mind, read the source document, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and ask yourself, does the historical evidence point to Christ being reliable or not?
Okay. Well, Christ has only existed for 2,000 years. Christianity has only existed for 2,000 years, more or less. What do you think that millions of people all over the world, before Christianity was even thought of, followed their own religions devoutly, passionately, just like you did?
Yes, sir.
It didn't make it real.
Yes.
It didn't make it, they'd go to heaven or whatever. It didn't make any of it happen beyond their own culture, beyond their own society, beyond their own environment. They could be Incans or, whatever culture they were raised in.
Right.
This is pre-Christian.
Yeah.
Just because Jesus is the flavor of the month doesn't mean that it's true.
That's right.
5,000 years from now, Christianity may be forgotten, or maybe something else. Who knows? Just like religions have passed on, religions have, gone in and out of fads and whatever. It's the same thing. It's a human cultural property that's nothing more than a figment of our culture.
Good. So you've just communicated your faith. And your faith is religion is simply a cultural additive. Different cultures have different religions.
Right.
You can't prove that. It's a faith that you have.
True. You look all around the world, there are different religions. All of them have identical things. People like you that are promoting one over the other, claiming, one is superior to the other. None of them have anything other than their talk. They don't have any proof as far as numbers. They can say, you can't put God in a jar and measure it.
Right.
Okay, so as far
Can't put love in a jar and measure it either.
But as far as being a physical thing,
right,
God is not provable. It only exists in your head. It cannot be demonstrated scientifically.
That's absolutely correct. You cannot scientifically demonstrate God.
There you go. Therefore, it's nothing more than what's in your head.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
would you please prove to me that unless you and I can scientifically prove something, it's not true?
Well, as far as I'm thinking, you're talking about eternal, your eternal destination. Why should you leave something that important to something you can't prove, something you're going to take on faith? Why are you going to leave your soul's eternity to something I'm just going to believe and hope it's true?
Okay, now let me ask it again. Please scientifically prove to me that unless we can scientifically prove something is true, it's not true.
Well, as far as 2 + 2 = 4, that's accepted to everyone. We can put 4 things and count them. Anyone will tell you there's 4 things there. But as far as like, I believe in Jesus and blah, 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 no one, that's an individual thing. And it doesn't go beyond the individual. It's like I like chocolate or I like vanilla. It doesn't matter. There's no proof that vanilla is better than chocolate, vice versa. It's all an individual opinion, a concept of the individual.
Now, let me ask it again. Please scientifically prove to me that unless we can prove something scientifically, it's not true.
What you're saying is really not even a question. Because you're saying scientifically prove that unless something is scientifically provable, it's not true.
That's what you're saying. Now I'm asking you to prove it to me.
Well,
you're standing out here saying, come on, man, all these religions, it's all just a cultural thing, it's all just blah, blah, blah. And you are saying, from your educated, superior viewpoint, you look out on all the cultures of the world with all their religions, and you as an educated white Westerner have the intelligence to realize it's all just a cultural bias. That's all it is. And you have as your big, big faith position, unless you nitwits, ignoramuses around the world, can scientifically prove that it's true. Guess what, nitwits? It ain't true. Now I'm asking you, in all honesty, please prove to me that unless you or I can scientifically prove something, it ain't true.
Okay.
Or, sir, is that your cultural bias?
Here's the truth. If you drop a ball, it will fall to the ground. That's the law of gravity. Anywhere in the world you drop a ball, it will go on the ground.
Good.
These are scientific principles. They're repeatable. They're provable.
Good.
The numbers involved. They're measurable.
Right.
There are laws that govern what the ball will do, how fast it will fall, at what speed, when it will hit the ground,
right,
and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's scientific. That's not something that says, I believe it, so it's true.
Good. Sir, right now, in your discussion with me, you are not using science. You are using logic. You cannot scientifically prove to me that your logic is true. Sir, when you go home and relate to your roommate, your relationship with your roommate has nothing to do with science. It has everything to do with trust, love, loyalty, and commitment, none of which you can scientifically show. Don't you see, sir, that science is a wonderful branch of knowledge? It's a beautiful branch of knowledge. But it is so narrow. It is so limited. What's a scientific date like? Do you enjoy a scientific date? No, I doubt it very seriously. Does your family life run on science? I doubt it. Scientifically, prove to me that Napoleon fought the Battle of Waterloo. Scientifically, prove to me that Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Come on, sir. You can't do it.
Well, here's another, just interesting perspective. If you look on a globe, Richmond is a small city among the whole world. What would make you think that of all the people in this world, somebody standing here at Richmond has got some knowledge that they need to spread to everyone else? I mean, what would make you think that all of a sudden, of all the
I'll tell you what.
billion people in
You bet. I'll tell you exactly what. I have a younger brother who's a transplant surgeon. He's involved in genetic research because he transplants kidneys and livers. And guess what, sir? Not all human bodies accept the new kidney or the new liver. And I can promise you, when my brother discovers the genetic way to manipulate a person's genes so they accept the new kidney and liver, he's going to be going all over the world, encouraging people who have to have a liver or kidney transplant to get the genetic manipulation going so their body will not reject the new organ. That is not arrogance on his part. It is motivated by love for people who have to have a new liver or a new kidney. And I can promise you, sir, I am convinced to the root of my being that Jesus Christ loves you, that he's got heaven out there for you. And I'd be a flaming hypocrite if I didn't tell you about it. That's all I'm saying.
Amen. You see no conflict when Jesus talks about the children of God being those that are pure in heart. Well, how is God going to send his child to hell? Okay?
Well, it's real
if
clear.
they haven't, and also when Jesus talks about the rich young ruler comes to Jesus and asks,
Yes.
Sir, what must I do to be saved?
Right.
Jesus doesn't say, well, believe in the cosmic significance of my future death. He gives a very different perspective.
Right.
So how can you say, standing right here, that everyone that does not understand Jesus the way that you understand his soteriology to be somehow under a mass delusion.
I have not said that. Instead, I have said, do not believe in Jesus because I do. What I have said is, go back and do your own homework, read the Gospels for yourself, examine Jesus on your own. I'm sorry, I cannot do your homework for you. Read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and ask yourself, does the historical evidence point to Christ being reliable, or does it not? And you decide for yourself.
See, when you say reliable, that's according to your perspective. That's why there's hundreds of different Christian denominations and all kinds of different things. That's why you can have a Bishop Spong and you and people like you. But when you say, when your argument becomes, believe the way that I believe, or suffer an eternity in hell, then, sir, that is when you take on something that is actually contrary to what Christ taught. Because I have studied, regardless of what you may think about us not doing our homework, people can come to different conclusions about the divinity of Jesus, and they can be equally as valid conclusions.
All right. And a Muslim can be equally valid, and an atheist can be equally valid in terms of their genuineness, but I am convinced that atheism is wrong. I am convinced that to trust Muhammad for salvation is unwise. I'm convinced that Jesus Christ spoke the truth. And Bishop Spong and I would part company.
Well, but they don't trust, that shows how little you know about Islam, because they don't trust in
You're right, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We're not to trust Muhammad, we're to trust Allah. But we are to follow the 5 pillars, which Muhammad taught.
Right.
And part of the first pillar is that Muhammad is his prophet.
Right. He's the last prophet in the line of Jesus and the rest. But you see religions that is not your own as inferior.
I never said they're inferior.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, sir, I did not.
Sir, when you say people that don't understand things that you do are going to hell, that's inferior.
I never said that.
That is no different.
Never once did I say that. Instead, what I said was, when you read the Gospels, there's no way you can escape the fact that Jesus warned about hell. Yes. Don't take it from me. Read it for yourself.
And he never said, believe on me or go to hell. Believe that I am God incarnate or go to hell.
All right, fine. What he said was, in John chapter 3, verses 16 to 18, he said, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned. But whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. I didn't say that. Jesus said it. Don't take it from me. Go back, John chapter 3, verses 16, 17, and 18. And do with it what you choose.
Don't take it from me either. Go back to Matthew 5, when Jesus gives the Sermon on the Mount and says, whoever is pure in heart will see God.
Really? He didn't say that.
You cannot see God.
He did not say that, sir. Come on, I know it, and you know it better than that. What he said is, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
That's correct.
That's what he said.
That's the King James translation.
No, that's not. That's the NIV translation. That's an accurate translation. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That's what he said.
Pure in heart versus which region of the world they're born into, which land they're born into, which doctrine they're born into.
And anthropology shows us that every culture has some type of religion. We as human beings have this innate drive to know God. Anthropology shows it real clearly.
My point is, it's hard to make these types of arguments if they are, because everyone has a basic understanding of God already, and it's so misconstrued over the ages. And so to say that God did or didn't do something is just, it's infallible, because you don't know. We have a written document written by man who assumes what God says is inherently true or inherently not true, but you can't say that because of this, there is this. You can't say because there is God, there is objective morals, because you have to say, well, assuming there's God, this is the best answer we have thus far.
Okay, did you hear your first statement? Your first statement was, all of us have a mistaken notion of God, which clearly implies that you are in a position to judge all people, and you have made a judgment call that all people have a mistaken judgment of God. How on earth did you achieve that level of intellectual, spiritual superiority?
It's not, I don't want to say superiority, I want to say misinterpreted, because nobody knows for sure. it's all based on assumptions. Like I said, if I drop my keys or if anyone drops anything, we've all learned what physics are. We all agree, and all right. If anyone disagrees that if you drop something, it's not going to fall, I'd like to hear it. And so you can argue, yeah, exactly. So there's a certain perception that would say, well, no, there is a small chance, mathematically and however rationale you want to put it, that, yeah, the keys might not fall. You could say that God would not make it fall, but that's a really poor assumption. So, in my opinion, you know, you can't justify any of these facts by saying God is this, therefore we go to heaven. Because you're assuming that I believe.
Let me ask you a question. If I stand here and say, for the past 5,000 years, human beings have believed that there's a God. The overwhelming majority of human beings have believed there's a God. They're all wrong. What will you think about me? I am one arrogant twit. If I'm going to sit here and say, for the past 5,000 years, the vast majority of humanity has believed that there's some type of God. But guess what? They're all wrong. I'm an arrogant twit. That's not an opinion. I said they are all wrong.
You know what you
And that's exactly what too many people on American university campuses do. They sit back and assume I have a position of superior intellect, and I judge all the religions of the world and say they're all wrong. That's incredible. How do I know that? That's assuming that I have this position of intellectual superiority and I can judge all the religions and tell everybody there's no God, you're all wrong.
But I'm not telling anyone that.
That's amazing. Well, you just said it right here.
I said there's an assumption that we're all wrong because we have this predetermined notion of what man wrote about God. I'm not right or wrong, but I'm also not out here telling people that I'm right or wrong.
Yes, you are. You stepped forward and you spoke very clearly, very articulately, and I respect your right to do that.
Thank you.
And you made some incredible claims. Just go back and examine the claims that you just made on your own. I didn't make them. You made them, sir. For me to kick back and say, all the people throughout the world who have believed in God are all wrong. They all have wrong interpretations. They're all just wrong. I mean, how do I know that?
How is finding meaning in life? Because you only have one life to live, according to atheists. You're going to die, and that's it.
Right.
So finding meaning in that life, as in going out and helping people, that's a meaning. That's a calling.
Yes.
You don't need God to tell you that.
Right.
So having that is, I don't understand how still finding meaning in life,
Right.
but not believing in God is hypocritical.
Okay. I respect you. You're an atheist who has decided my meaning in life is to help people. Good. But if you're going to be intellectually consistent, what you've got to admit is, just as easily, just as correctly, just as genuinely, I could go out and slaughter people and define that as the meaning of my life. One is not right, the other's not wrong, they're just different.
Right.
Okay, now I don't think you're willing to live that out, are you?
Slaughtering people? No.
No, but are you willing to live your life as if being Mother Teresa or being Adolf Hitler are both equally valid? They're just different.
Uh-huh.
Really?
One is considered by people to be evil and wrong, but you know, that's considered by society. Hitler had followers who believed everything he said.
Yep.
But that's their personal ideal, that's their personal belief, and they're allowed to believe that. We as society find that wrong, but we're not the ones who have to sit there and convince people of that. They're already convinced. They're going to go off and die for what they believe in, which is exactly what Christians do too. They went off and died for what they believed in and killed people for it. It's the same thing as what Hitler and the Nazis did. They went off and killed people and died for what they believed in.
And all I'm saying is, if you really believe there is no God, if you really believe morality is relative, then you have no basis of saying what Hitler did is evil.
No.
Instead, what you have to say is, Hitler did his thing, Mother Teresa does her thing. It's just different. It's like, do you prefer broccoli or corn? Do you prefer Hitler or Mother Teresa? It's all relative. It's all just a matter of personal preference. Now, can you live your life that way?
Uh-huh.
I don't think so.
Well, it would be like me trying to tell you that that the Crusades are wrong, because that's basically the same thing. And everybody knows that they were wrong, but
No, everybody does not know that they were wrong.
Exactly.
Everybody does not know that racism is wrong. Everybody does not know that murder is wrong. Everybody does not know that rape is wrong. Everybody does not know that date rape is wrong. Now, I'm standing here saying there's a value of justice that Nazi Germany violated. It's a value of justice that does not depend upon educated Americans. It's a value of justice that is very real. And you, through your conscience, can understand that value. And that's why when you see innocent children slaughtered, you don't say, well, that's one approach to life. No. Instead, you reel back with moral indignation saying, the slaughter of innocent children is absolutely wrong. But that contradicts your belief. Because your belief tells you, no, the slaughter of innocent children is not absolutely wrong, it's relatively wrong. For me, it might be wrong, but for them, it's right. So? But you see, I stand with Dr. Martin Luther King, who says racism is absolutely wrong. Why? Because God created all human beings in his image, with an innate value in dignity. But you see, ma'am, if there's no God, we don't have an innate value in dignity. We're all cosmic accidents, and life is meaningless. So if I want to oppress one race because it helps turn the economic wheels of my culture, there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. It helps me get ahead economically. I don't think you can live that out.
I don't believe that, because I have been raised to think that that is wrong. That is how I've been raised, and that is what I've been taught by history and science. Because biologically, everybody is made the same. Nobody is better or worse. And science will explain that that is true.
Oh, no. If you're an atheist, what you're saying is, we have evolved. So obviously, some have evolved to a higher level than others.
Okay.
That's exactly what Hitler did. He took evolution and Darwinism to its logical conclusion.
That's what he believed.
Aryan race is superior to the Jewish race, to the African race. He asserted Aryan supremacy. Certainly, you would never tell the cannibal that what they're doing is wrong. You realize that what the cannibal is doing is not wrong in any objective sense. You just realize that you live in a culture that has a different opinion. So you would never tell a cannibal not to eat his neighbor.
I honestly cannot say that I wouldn't tell him that.
Thank you.
That is what I believe, is that it is wrong. But that's because of the society I was raised in. If I was raised in a cannibal society, I would believe that eating people is right.
You gotta be kidding me. You believe that eating people is wrong because you were raised in America?
Yes. If I was raised in a cannibal society, they would have taught you from a very young age that in order to survive, you would have to eat people.
So if you'd have been born in America at the time of the Dred Scott decision, you'd believe that black folk would be 3/5 the value of white folk?
Probably. Because that's what I was taught.
If what you say is correct, that there is no God, if we all are all simply accidents, one is not right, the other's not wrong, we're just different. And if you like broccoli or corn or human flesh to eat, it's all relative. It's all just a personal opinion. But if there is a God who created human beings with innate value, then cannibalism is absolutely evil. The movie Cinderella Man is the true story about heavyweight boxer James J. Braddock. He boxed during the Depression. He began to fall. He began to lose bouts. He began to lose income to support his wife and precious children. The Depression hit. He tried to find work at the docks in New Jersey, but he was unable to. He had to receive federal assistance. That was incredibly humbling, humiliating for him. But then he began a comeback. And many Americans during the Depression took great comfort and were very excited about the comeback of James J. Braddock. Every time, though, that he stepped into the ring and won a match, during the fight, the pictures in his mind were of his wife and his children. And it was the pictures in his mind of his family that drove him on to excellence in the boxing ring. And finally the time came when he was allowed to box against the heavyweight champion of the world, Max Baer. But Max Baer was known for having killed 2 men in the ring. And there was a lot of concern among a lot of Americans that their hero, James J. Braddock, who had fought back from being in the bottom, would be killed. The night of the fight, his trainer is with him, some other attendees, when suddenly his wife walks into that locker room in the bowels of the stadium. A look of determination on her face scatters everybody out of the room. She walks up to her husband, James J. Braddock, and she says, "You remember who you are. You're the bulldog of Bergen County. You're the pride of New Jersey. You're the hope of a lot of Americans. You're every kid's hero. And you are the champion of my heart, James J. Braddock." The fierce loyalty of Mrs. Braddock drove her husband on to excellence, and he won the title bout. He became the heavyweight champion of the world. But the tremendous loyalty of Braddock towards his wife and his wife towards him is incredible. It was his loyalty to his wife and his children, his desire to provide for them, that drove him on to train in spite of the physical pain, to fight those bouts in spite of the agony that he experienced. And her love for him and loyalty to him was fierce and deep. Often people ask, why would a human being commit their life to Christ? Isn't God some egotistical despot when he calls us to trust in him and to commit our lives to him? No, the opposite is true. God is a God who humbles himself and became man in Jesus Christ. And the reason he did that is because of his loyalty to you and to me. You and I have rebelled against him. You and I have run away from him. You and I have become distant from him. That is why at times God is hidden, it seems. That is why at other times it seems that God is silent. No, God is not hiding and God is not silent. But because you and I have played so many games with God, we have distanced ourselves from him. But he humbled himself and became a man in Christ. And that is exactly what the Apostle Paul writes about in that great paean of praise in Philippians chapter 2, where Paul writes, "Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking upon himself the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross." You and I can let go of our pride. You and I can let go of our false stereotypes of a wicked despot ruling from heaven. For Jesus Christ has revealed the amazing loyalty and love of the living God for you and for even me. Now it's time. Now it's time to respond to this God, to Jesus Christ. Ask him for forgiveness. Put your faith and trust in him and commit your life to him. Not because you're scared of him, but because you are blown out of the water by his loyalty, his commitment, his love for you. God bless you as you make that most profound decision.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Like and hit that subscribe button in order to join the family. Also want to invite you to our church where we pastor at in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's called Grace Community Church. We are currently meeting at a middle school, Saxe Middle School, and we start at 9:30 a.m. Hope to meet you there. See you soon.